Well, my name's Kenny Wetlaufer, and I think Ted Meyer and I headed up the trip down to Ecuador. I think we left January 8th, and it was a great trip. Got a lot accomplished, and it was just great to get to know the guys on the team. So I'd like to introduce them. I think Ted Meyer, Neil Tompkins, John Jansing, Rod Gardner, and Matt Randolph. Dane Allison also went with us, and I don't think he's here today. And Ken Jennings also joined the group too. But I think we'll start the slides, and we're just going to kind of talk about the slides and the pictures, and each of us will get our spot. So here's the team here, and this is the new office building we are at quite a bit. So we started off the trip packing. They wanted us to bring down quite a few tools and other things that the missionaries use down there. It's hard to get supplies down there, and they're really expensive. So we packed up as much as we could, and I think we took down quite a few. Was it peanut butter and a bunch of other things for the kids and for the families. So yeah, lots of M&Ms. So
another praise the Lord was that we were able to get all of our stuff. 2 years ago, when the team from here went down to Ecuador, they took like, I think, 10 or 12 trunks, and we were concerned about getting through customs. And at that time, we went through as like a breeze. And again, this time, we had no trouble getting through customs. It was just amazing. And it really is a blessing to them, that all the stuff we can bring down to them.
Yeah, I think the only problem we had was the flights the first day going down. I think we got down to Omaha in the morning, I think 5:30 in the morning, and we sat in the airport in Omaha till 3:30. That was a challenge, and I think one God moment during that time was we were waiting there. Our flight kept getting canceled, and we were going to miss our Chicago flight to Houston. And I saw in our email text that they're going to delay our flight again, so I went up to the attendant who was in charge of the tickets and got up there, and they canceled that flight to Chicago right when I got up there. And so we got up there. I got up there before about 30, 40 other people got up there, and we were able to get a direct flight to Houston instead of going to Chicago. So that was quite a big deal there. So
this was when we arrived in Quito at midnight, and Eric Fogg picked us up and took us to this little bed and breakfast. For that night, we only had about maybe 4 or 5 hours in the sack, but it was a dormitory style situation. Found out who the snorers were, but and then we had breakfast there, and then we went on to. But it was a nice. It worked well for that first night.
It was a lot of firsts for me on this trip. The first time I ever been out of the country or anything, but it was the first time I ever spent any time in a bed and breakfast with 7 other guys. That was interesting.
this is Quito here, and Quito's up in the mountains, and they said Quito goes, was it 7 miles, guys? Down this valley, and I think it's about a mile wide. But this town goes on forever. It's just amazing. It's hard to see in the pictures here, but how big the city is, it's just amazing. And in the top right, you can see a church cathedral kind of back in the background. I think it's been in construction for, I don't know how many years it was, but if they finish the church, they have to pay taxes on the church. So everything's always in construction mode.
Yeah, you'll see houses that have rebar stuck out the top, and people don't intend to ever finish the houses because, like I say, once they're finished, they have to pay more taxes on them. But yeah, the climate, Quito is about 9,000 feet altitude, and being it's right on the equator, the climate varies very little. Its temperature ranges from like maybe 55 to 75 year-round. and they get a little rain, but not a lot. There, it's somewhat arid in this part of Ecuador.
The top right-hand corner, the egg standing up on its end, and I didn't wonder what they were doing with an egg out there on the Ecuador or on the equator. But you can tan an egg on its end and on the equator, and you can't anywhere else in the world. So that was kind of interesting.
They had a pedestal here where you can balance an egg on top of a nail. And that was, people would be sitting there trying to do that, and you'd eventually get it, but it's really hard to do.
If you see that yellow line there, you can have one foot on the southern hemisphere and the other foot on the northern hemisphere there.
Go back one, Kenny, please. It's not a very good picture, but the lower left-hand corner is Ken Jennings on the lower right-hand corner in the coat there. I have to tell you a little story about him. When we heard that Neil's relative was going to go, he was emailing back and forth with Kenny, and he says to Kenny, "Is that Rod Gardner? Is that the one that's married to Rita Gardner?" And Kenny said, "Yeah." Well, anyway, when we went to Ecuador or Mali back in the '90s, 2 years in a row, he was there with us, both teams, and it was a great time to reunite with him. We haven't talked or seen each other for 20-some years. So.
Yeah, I had met Ken in 1976 on a mission trip to Ecuador, and it ends up that his wife and my wife Ruth are first cousins. Ken lives up in northeast North Dakota, and so it was a blessing that he could go along. He was looking for he ranches and farms up there and has kind of the winter off, and so it was a blessing to have him go along. This is Santiago Enriquez, or Santiago Sola. He was an exchange student that lived with us back in school year of 05, 06. And he's from Quito. And some of you might remember him. He was a senior that year along with my son Dave. And so when I made the decision to go to Ecuador with the team, I tried to contact Santi. I thought it would be so neat to see him again, and I tried email, different Facebook, different things, and I just no response for over a month. And about a week before we were to leave, I heard from him via Facebook, and he had been on vacation down on the coast. But anyway, it worked out that I was able to get him in contact with Eric Fogg, the Ecuadorian leader, and he and his mother met us here at this monument, the Ecuador monument, and I was able to see he and his mom and dad briefly, and then Santi went with us, traveled with us that day down to Shell and spent a day with us and went to church. And it was he's still not a believer, I don't think, but it was just a real answer of prayer for me that I thought it was neat that the team could meet an Ecuadorian guy, very eager to answer any questions that we had, and very eager to share and talk, and I just thought it would be a great experience for him to meet the team and to meet Eric Fogg and to go to Shell and see that part of. He had never been that far into Ecuador, and to see what the Reach Beyond is doing there in Shell. So don't know what seeds we may have planted, but hopefully it was maybe a God experience for him.
This was our guest house here, and we were pretty spoiled. It was really nice inside. So, I'm not sure if any other guys have anything to say about it, but
Yeah, it was a beautiful place to stay.
there were tarantulas outside in the walls, though. So, this is Eric Fogg's family. They're down there doing the water missions projects, and I think they have 3 kids of their own, and they're adopting Jacob there. They're in the process of adopting Jacob, so.
Yeah, this is some of the food we ate the first Sunday we were down there. It was interesting. On the left, that was the chicken. I had the chicken that day. And some of the guys on the upper right there had the fish. And that wasn't going to work for me, looking at that. But when you order fish, you get the whole fish. And they said when you eat this side, then you're half done. You got to flip it over and eat the other side. But on the bottom on the right, boy, that was good food there. There's baked pancake with ice cream and chocolate on it, and you can put a lot of fruit, whatever you want to put on it, but that was good.
This is Nate Saint's house when he was there back in the 50s when them 5 got slain or killed by the Indians. But anyway, one of the reasons I wanted to go to Ecuador is that when we went to Mali the second year, the team leader was a missionary here in Shell for lots of years, and he lived in Nate Saint house. And it's kind of a museum now. They've got we never got any pictures of inside, I guess, but it's just pictures and spears and stuff of the years of it being there.
And the school's right next to Nate Saint's house, so it was. We went to school just to see it that Monday morning, and they had a little presentation for us, and it was neat to see all the kids there and what they're studying and their focus on God and everything. So, this is the hospital that Jay Allison worked at. It's abandoned now, but it was. We went inside and took some electrical wire out one day, and it's just kind of eerie to seeing just an empty hospital sitting there. And it's deteriorating quite quick because of the humidity and all the termites and everything like that. So
It was pretty eerie around there too. Around on the east side, towards the back of the hospital, there's a sign above the door that said morgue. That was interesting too. Every time you come outside, there's some different kind of a bug hanging around there waiting for you. And up in the middle and on top there, and on the bottom on the yellow thing, there's fuzzy caterpillars. They said, do not touch the fuzzy caterpillar because you'll get sick, maybe die. And that tarantula, one night we went tarantula hunting, and all we could do was find one. But it was interesting.
They said to really be watchful of snakes. We never saw a snake, but they said that there's poisonous snakes around there. So that's about the only wildlife we saw down there. Every morning we went to a little cafe which was just a half a block from the house that we lived in, and it was literally a mom and pop little cafe restaurant, and they really treated us like royalty. I felt every breakfast was more like a lunch. There was a meat, chicken, beef, pork, There was usually rice, plantain, cooked bananas, some fruit juice, coffee, and they had a son who was 25 who was bilingual, and it was really fun to visit with him and get acquainted with him. But they were just really a wonderful couple. And then most of our lunches were at another restaurant down in downtown Shell. So we really did eat quite well. We didn't suffer for. We didn't lose any weight. No.
This is just one of the storage sheds that we cleaned out. We cleaned out several, moved stuff out of here to another central location, just so it'd be easier to get to and work with.
They had stuff in these that people brought down to leave. There was boxes and boxes of tubes for old radios that wouldn't have any use for them anymore, but they moved all that stuff out.
Here we are moving. They had two little pickups. They're both four-door with short box. That's what we used, and those vehicles are very common down there as well as all over Latin America, I think. But yeah, we cleaned out 3 or 4 different storage units. They call them bodegas down there, and just helped Eric and the other missionaries do a lot of organizing. Some stuff just need to be thrown away. A lot of stuff went to the new office. Other stuff went to the storage unit, big storage area by the hospital. And that was one of the things that we did to help the missionaries there, was all of this moving and organizing and getting the new office up and running.
Probably couldn't really do that back here, right on the top of a pickup with those shelves. It took 4 guys to lift those shelves, so not the most light thing. While we were there was a water main break that we got to fix, and we got to dig this nice trench that was about 2.5 foot deep and 20-30 foot long, and that soil down there is really different from around here. It's every shovel you scoop sticks to the shovel, and not the most fun. So
they also had like 5 pipes stacked on top of each other, and the reason we're fixed is because there's a leak, and there's electric wire buried there too that we came fairly close to severing. So I think they put everything all in one trench, and it's
on rain days, we worked underneath worked inside the buildings and things. And this was a project, they had a bunch of these old benches from the hospital, or 3 benches from the hospital. And I think Neil spent one day taking apart one of them, and then I think John and I spent another morning putting them back together. And they're using them now at the school for seats underneath the basketball hoop. So.
Can't see it very well here, but on the right side, on the lower right, it rained pretty good one day. And I think the biggest rain they had was 3 inches one night and 3 inches next morning. Got about 6 inches there in about, 12 hours or so. And Eric said he'd hope while we were there we'd see a good jungle rain, 10 inches in an hour.
It rained a lot while we were there. It seemed like in the mornings. One day it rained all day, but Eric was telling us that they average like 24 feet of rain a year or so.
one of the projects we worked on was I don't know, I think this might be one of the only septic tanks in town, but most of them just run directly to the river, I think. But we got to work on this project for about 3 or 4 days. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there's a septic tank we were working on. I got to know that Pedro there in with me. He was pretty patient dealing with me. I couldn't communicate with him very well, but he tried to teach me some Spanish and different things. But we were able to get some things accomplished there. So.
One night after it rained a bunch, we went down there and the septic tank was full, and the outside was full, so we had to rig a pump in there to pump it all out before they could finish going any farther on that.
That bucket hanging on that pipe was the kids went inside and went to the number 2 in the bathroom in there, so we had to catch everything that was coming out so it didn't land on us.
Yeah, the way they do septics there was they poured a floor and then built a cement block wall, and then there was going to be the pipes there you see going out would then go on out from there. But most people don't have septics. They just, like Ted said, they just let it drain to the river.
We cut that back the jungle here in this picture. It was hard to see this building from this far away when we first got there, but I think John and I spent the afternoon climbing up the trees and cutting down some big limbs with the chainsaw, and I think one guy rolled off the roof on the bodega there. He rolled off about a foot of moss and leaves and all that buildup and things. So, but that was kind of one of my highlights, is being up in the trees, and got to climb trees in the jungle. That was pretty good.
Yeah, they asked for a volunteer in a chainsaw to go up a tree. Who do you suppose volunteered for that?
This is putting in a electric wire. A new wire had to be strung from the street through the office there in the background down to another house, and the wire came from the hospital. It was a wire that wasn't being used anymore. It was a triple 3 wires. It was maybe a 2 side, number 2 or something like that. And it was a big job to remove it from the ceilings in the hospital and to install it. So that was another project we helped with.
That wire is probably, I don't know, 50 yards long or something like that. So we pushed it all the way through the blue tube, and the tube really wasn't quite big enough. Then it went through the office and then over to this other house, and it was all one piece when it got all said and done. It was a big undertaking. Me and Dane, and well, a lot of us done parts of the office, and they got these desks and stuff out of the hospital that wasn't being used, and they've just been in storage there since they closed it, so they was all dirty. But they moved them over there out of the hospital or wherever they come up with them and set them in there, and so we tried to get everything organized. We had to cut some off and shim some up, and the holes were already drilled in the wrong place, so we just kind of had to work around everything. This is one of the main offices that you first come into, but there's three other offices that had desks in them. It took quite a while just to reassemble and try to figure out what would work best for everybody. That's just kind of the finished look of the one office. It's not quite finished, but getting pretty close.
This is pretty much what I spent most of my time doing, is power washing the new building they were going into. They basically want to do a new paint job on it, and so we kind of had to make sure there was no, the paint had all been dried and kind of just started to flake. So pretty much what I spent doing, I kind of made myself a little water suit because it would rain like the entire time we were there. Plus I was spraying water, so it was just, I was drenched. So I made this little water suit, kind of keep me a little bit drier. So.
Ken and I, we did a lot of dirt work around the building to get the water away so it wouldn't run towards the building. So that was interesting working on that too. I think Neil did a bunch of dirt work out front too, along the fence, just trying to get things leveled off. So.
This is another first for me, the suspension bridge. I really love that bridge. I think it was about 80 yards long, and I think you probably could have drove a bus on it. It wasn't one of them you have to worry about falling through. And if you get in the middle and look down, I don't know, maybe 50, 60 feet was where the river was, and it was just jungle. It was pretty cool to be out on that bridge. And when you walked on it, you kind of get along okay, but if there's two people walking, it would kind of start bouncing in the middle and make it tough to walk. And if you run on that bridge, it really gets interesting.
Yeah, we had fun. There's several mornings that some of us went for a jog, and there was one morning that we went for a pretty long hike. We took the pickup a little ways towards the next town over called Puyo, and then walked up to the top of this mountain where there were several radio towers, like cell towers, and we were hoping to get a view of the volcano from there, but it stayed cloudy, so we didn't get to see the volcanoes that morning. But there was one morning that we did get to see the volcanoes. This was church. We had the blessing of going to church twice. I think it was kind of service, kind of like ours. A lot of songs, worship, music at the beginning, and a few announcements, and then the message. So it was just a very vibrant, evangelical, Bible-based, Bible-believing church there. Shell is unique. The city of Shell is unique in that it's strongly evangelical. Every other town in Ecuador, every town in Ecuador has a city square, and there's a Catholic church located somewhere along that square. But Shell is unique in that it was established by the Protestant missionaries back in the 40s and 50s. And so there's several, there is a Catholic church in the town, but it's not located on the city square. And there's probably a half a dozen evangelical churches there in the town of Shell as well. This was the kind of the casual living room next to our dorm rooms that we stayed in, and very comfortable. And one of the blessings that I think we had as a team was that we had a devotion almost every day. And I had the privilege and challenge of trying to either have something ready, or I think everybody took a turn, or I lined up, asked somebody to be prepared to share a devotion. And then most of us, sometime throughout the week, shared our testimony with each other. And I think that's one of the blessings of going on a trip like this, is that you get to know the other team members a lot better than, and that's one of the benefits of a small group too. It's a way of, and like, you know, our Sunday school class groups, our small groups, is that I think all of us feel like we know each other, and we have a camaraderie with each other that we certainly never had before which is one of the benefits and blessings of going on a trip like this.
I don't know how to explain it either, but it's just kind of an interesting feeling sitting in a room full of guys like that, and everybody reading their own Bible, and you don't know what the guy next to you is studying or what he's reading, but it's just a neat feeling to have a handful of guys like that sitting in one room reading your own Bible. This is, on the left here is David. He's an interesting character. I worked with him some, and it was kind of interesting. One day, I didn't know the words, or it wasn't in my head, I just couldn't come up with it, but I know it was a Christian song that he was humming, and it was just kind of cool to be around him. He had a neat little laugh, too, and couldn't communicate with him very well. He had a lot of sign language, where he spoke Spanish, and I sure didn't. And one day we talked politics. That was interesting. And being around him, I'll stand up for this. But if you're talking about your dog, or your cat or your horse or your cow or whatever, it's this high. But if you're talking about a man, your brother or your wife or your mom, they're this high. To the bottom of your hand is their height. They aren't this high. They get offended. They're this high.
These are just some of the guys that we worked with, and they were all believers, and so it was just really fun. And this picture up in the upper right corner, the Ecuadorians who are the native indigenous, or from the native indigenous tribes, are all fairly short, like me. So it was kind of fun for me to be around a bunch of guys that were, kind of my size.
There was a place that we ate one evening. I think we had hamburgers and stuff, and I was sitting there with Jacob, I think. So.
Before I left, I talked with Elroy. I talked to him off and on, but he said if you really get a chance to go out in the jungle, there's some planes that'll take you out there and land you, and in the villages out in the country, and that's the only way you can get there unless you hike there and stuff. And a lot of the villages got little runways there, and there ain't no roads there, so it's either hike or fly in. So we got it on. 4 of us went out one day and spent the day or just for an hour or so to fly out there. And of course the ground's is all wet and soft, and they'd land that plane, and then little old wheels that stink in that mud, and they'd just throw mud all up the side of the bottom of the wings. Are so soft. But this is just some pictures that we seen there.
Highlight for me was and those of us, it was Matt and Ken Jennings and Rod and myself, and the pilot, of course, flew into this village. And this was the village, those of you who know the story of the 5 missionaries that were killed by Auca Indians back in 1956. This is, I had seen the movies, read the books about the story, never imagining that I would ever have the chance to go to the village but this is actually the village that the warriors were from. This is the people group that those warriors were from that killed those missionaries. And one of the warriors is still alive. People say sometimes he's at this village, and sometimes he's in Shell. He's around, and one day at the cafe that we eat lunch with, the missionary said there was some other Ecuadorians there, and he said that one of the guys there was the grandson of one of those warriors. And so what was inspirational to me was that we were able to fly into this village that 50, 60 years ago were very hostile to any whites, to any outsiders. You were taking your life in your hands to go there. And now there's this building here is a school, and we were showing the church. The people were very, very friendly. Most everybody are believers there. They were just so, the change that has taken place in that many years from being hostile to, being believers, was just a real inspirational highlight for me.
Yeah, there's more food here. We did eat good. This is in Puyo, a pizza place we went to, and got on the left there, we was able to watch the guy make pizza. I think this guy came from Italy, married a gal from Ecuador, and just stayed making pizza ever since.
This was Jacob's birthday party too, so it was a fun celebration.
Yeah, that night too we had chocolate pizza. I think probably first for me anyway. I don't know about the rest of the guys.
This is a video here of kind of what Eric does down there with all the water projects, so I'll play that.
My name is Eric Fogg, and I work for Reach Beyond, a Christian mission organization formerly known as HCJV Global. We're here today in the community of YU Censor working with the people to bring a clean water project.
They have a lot of water around. They live right next to a river, but it's brown and really unhealthy to drink.
Tener una agua bien segura porque hay muchas enfermedades.
100% of this village tested positive for parasites. Having clean water to drink will completely eliminate that problem. It's estimated that their life expectancy will improve up to 20 years after this project is finished.
We've taken one of the larger springs and we're protecting it so that no contaminants can get in, and then we're going to pump it out directly to the community, so it'll make it a lot more convenient for them, and it'll also make sure that they're getting clean water.
We're also having the community dig, I think it's a kilometer-long trench, which is a lot of work, and it's up a muddy, steep hill. It's been really cool to watch them work together to do that. Their joy in the really hard work and that they're laughing together.
Alas de Socorro is an incredibly key part of our ministry of what we do here. Every piece of concrete, tube, material, hammer, nails are brought to the communities by Alas de Socorro. We have in the neighborhood of 6 or 7 other communities we're working with at the same time, and they play an incredibly key role in the work that we do.
We love playing with Alice. It's such a blast. The pilots are awesome. We literally couldn't be here without them.
Este año, en 2014, vamos a tener agua bien limpio. Gracias. Eso es la comunidad guayusense.
I don't know if what Eric, or any of the guys, what Eric Fogg and the Reach Beyond does there is, right now, is since the hospital is closed, is these water projects, and there's, out in the jungle, there are many, many villages out there that are primarily only accessible by plane, and this is the way that is used to bring Christianity to these villages, is by offering to help them to bring clean water. And so Eric and other missionaries go in, they do surveys, the villages, communities have to apply for this help. So they go out and it's these, to put in a water project takes a year to year and a half to do. And it's this way, by meeting the people, building relationships, that they hope to share the gospel and bring Christ to these communities. Because otherwise, the water project is the door by which they try to bring Christ the gospel to these communities. Anybody else?
These projects, they got to apply for these to get the water project in there, but they got to do all the work themselves, basically. Like Eric goes and helps, the guys go and help them, but they got to do all the digging themselves. If they do a lot of the work, they know how to fix it, then they take some ownership. If people from the States or wherever just come down and build it, they probably won't ever use it, because if they don't have ownership of it, they don't do nothing with it. And then Eric's told us a lot of creative ways they've tried to get these tanks out there. They float them down the river, they do this and that, and a lot of the pipes they stick in the plane and fly out there to the little landing strip. But of course they ain't gonna take a pipe that long. They probably cut that three times, get it in the plane, then they glue it all back together when they get out there. So that was kind of neat the way they do all that. But if they got ownership of it, they'll keep it up and keep it running.
Well, that's most of the slides we have for this. Does anybody have any questions at all? Or do any of the team members want to add anything else?
I'm just going to say some of the takeaways for me from this trip has been to apply this, getting to know people and just spend time with them, whether it be our neighbors, coworkers, family, or whoever we'd find out, they're doing. Build a relationship with them, pray for them, and hopefully be able to tell them about Jesus and what He has done in our lives, because as Christians, one of our main purposes in this life is to make disciples wherever He has placed us at this time. Some of my highlights were talking with Eric and his challenge for us to think outside the box, working with Pedro on the septic tank, going to the waterfall, getting to know my teammates, and a drive back to Quito.
Yeah, I got another first for me, first time I ever talked to a mic this much. But it was a great time. I just wanted to thank this handful of guys for taking me along. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to go again sometime, see how it works out. Just thanks, guys.
We'd like to thank you all for your prayers and your support, too. That was greatly needed. So,
Yeah, we could really feel your prayer, especially that first Saturday trying to get out of Omaha. That was, God came through in an amazing way for us there. We were concerned that we wouldn't make our flight out of Houston to Quito that night, but we did. Just barely, but we did.
About the flight, we was going to get in Houston after our plane was even supposed to leave. And, well, they did talk them into waiting. So we hurried up and landed, and then I never had them do it before, but the pilots asked, or the stewardess asked everybody if they didn't have a connecting flight to just stay seated and let the ones get off. And come to find out where we had to get on it was probably a mile run. I think it was 8 miles, but we run to it, and they're still there waiting for us, and it worked out really good. And then when we get down to Ecuador, we're only like 3 minutes late from where it was scheduled. So,
well, thank you everybody for watching this, and just thank you for all the prayers again.